For most people, a home means four walls, a roof, and memories fitted inside. But today, we will talk about a man whose home was the entire world, yet who belonged nowhere. With two old suitcases in his hands and the darkest problems of number theory in his mind, he moved back and forth between continents like a refugee, Paul Erdős. He was one of the most productive minds of modern mathematics. However, he paid the price of this productivity by sacrificing the most basic things a human can have: a home, a family, and even the health of his own body. Today, on the Cost of Genius, we will examine how a life spent chasing numbers completely erased the real world. Paul Erdős had no concept of ownership in his life. For him, ownership was a distracting burden. He once said, "Property is a nuisance." That is why he fit his entire life into two suitcases. One contained his clothes, the other his mathematical notes. He would go to a city, knock on a mathematician's door, and say only one thing: "My brain is open." This meant, give me a couch, put a piece of paper in front of me, and let us immerse ourselves in the mystery of numbers. He would stay in that house for weeks, work on mathematics for 19 hours a day, and then pack his suitcases to move on to the next city. For Erdős, the world was nothing more than a giant waiting room where mathematics was done. So what was Erdős chasing? What drove him to move so restlessly from continent to continent? He was obsessed with the most mysterious parts of numbers, especially prime numbers. For Erdős, numbers were not randomly arranged digits. They were parts of a vast book written by God, whom he called the Supreme Fascist. He wanted to find the most elegant, the purest proofs in that book. His work on Ramsey theory, in particular, represents the peak of his genius. This theory proves that even within complete chaos, there must necessarily be some form of order. For example, it mathematically proves that among 6 people at a party, there will be at least 3 who either all know each other or all do not know each other. This may sound simple, but Erdős carried it to a universal level. He saw an absolute architecture hidden within disorder. However, seeing so much order on paper completely destroyed the order in his own life. The price Erdős paid was total detachment from the physical world. Despite being a grown man, he could not even peel a piece of fruit on his own. He had difficulty tying his shoelaces. His mind operated on such a high level that he did not care what his fingers were doing. In order to function, he became dependent on amphetamines. He consumed dozens of cups of coffee and powerful stimulants every day. When his friends, worried about his health, made a bet with him to stop taking the drugs for 1 month, Erdős won the bet but said this: "You set me back by 1 month." During that time, I stared at the paper and saw nothing. Without mathematics, without numbers, I am nothing. His loneliness was different from Perelman's silent loneliness. Erdős was always among people, but in reality, he was with no one. He never married, never had children, and never had a bed he could wake up in and say, "This is my home." He was a social genius, but an emotional nomad. He could connect with people only through numbers. If you were not a mathematician, you were almost invisible to Erdős. In his world, there was no love, friendship, or sorrow, only theorems waiting to be proven. Even his extreme attachment to his mother came from the fact that she was his only harbor in the world. When his mother died, Erdős's last thin connection to the world was also severed. He never stopped until the end of his life. At the age of 83, while attending a mathematics conference in Warsaw, he died alone in a hotel room. Beside him were once again those same 2 old suitcases. Even at the moment of his death, the problem he was working on remained unfinished. He turned the world into a hotel room in order to find the truth. for the cold and flawless beauty of numbers. He pushed away the warmth a human being needs. Paul Erdős shows us this. Genius is sometimes not an expansion, but a contraction. When your mind reaches the limits of the universe, the room you live in begins to feel unfamiliar. He was the master of numbers, but he could not even be a guest in his own life, because some secrets are so bright that looking at them blinds you and leaves everything else in darkness. In this episode of The Cost of Genius, you watched a refugee whose home was numbers. If stories of tragic genius like this interest you, do not forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. In the next episode, we will meet another soul crushed under the weight of truth. Goodbye.